Welcome to Prevue InFocus Live, co-sponsored by iMeet. We want to welcome everyone from around the world and glad to have you with us today. We're going to be looking at the ROE experience and destinations as an ROE influencer. We've got a great panel with us today, but before we start, I want to remind you that we have a $100 e-gift card, and we'll have a drawing at the end of the program, so stay with us and maybe you will be the lucky winner. So let's get started and meet our panel. And also want to remind you, by the way, that we have the programs available after the live event for you to see again or to share with other people. And they'll be available on the iMeet website, which is one of our co-sponsors, the Prevue magazine website, YouTube, and also the audio on iTunes. So join us after this and continue the experience yourself with others. Okay, let's meet Eli Gorin. Eli is VP and VP of Global Client Services for ABTS Convention Services. And we'd like to invite Eli to say a few words and welcome. Thank you, Eli. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Thanks so much. Thanks so much, Virginia. As Virginia mentioned, I'm VP of Global Client Relations at ABTS Convention Services. Really long title, very confusing. Our company works with, for the most part, medical associations handling international group housing for medical conferences. So we work with a global audience and pretty much help them get a better experience when they're coming to the U.S. Mostly we work with U.S. associations so they can experience what it is to take part in a conference here. Prior to ABTS, I had my own business called G Meetings, which focused on meeting management in Latin America. International meetings and cultural exchange is actually a really big part of my experience in the meetings industry.
Fabulous.
So it's a bit about me.
¿Tú hablas español? Do you speak Spanish?
I live in Miami. I have to. No, my family's originally from Colombia, so I grew up speaking Spanish at home. It's actually my first language.
Oh, qué bien, qué bien. Okay, let's meet Jeff NELKE. Jeff is VP and GM for Access Florida. Welcome, Jeff, and a little bit about yourself and your background.
Thanks, Virginia. Yeah, great to be here with you guys. Access Destination Services is a nationwide DMC that prides itself on working with high-end corporate clients that are usually inbound into our different destinations. My primary focus is here in South Florida. We do about 250 meetings a year, and primary services are helping everything from ground transportation to event production, custom tours and activities, basically being that extended arm from a meeting planner. Background, I cut my teeth in the incentive world working for Merritt's Travel back in the early to mid-90s, and had an opportunity to travel the world and get a chance to see how some other destinations did things, and like to think that I brought a little nugget of the best of what's out there to bring it back to South Florida. So happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Glad to have you, Jeff, and also Eli. And now let's meet Shirley, too. Speaking of destinations and fabulous places to visit, Shirley is with the Macau Government Tourist Office, and I've had the opportunity to be with Shirley, and she is an incredible person. And let's meet her and learn a little bit about her background. Shirley.
Thank you, Virginia, for that great endorsement. Thank you, everyone, for your time. My name is Shirley, too. I work for the Macau Government Tourist Office. Our primary job here in the United States is, for the MICE market, is to help the planners in choosing venues, doing the paperwork for our incentive stimulus program, et cetera, et cetera. I've been with Macau Tourism for about 6 years.
Great. Glad to have you with us, and let's get started. We've got a terrific panel with a lot of depth and experience, and I want to remind our participants that if you have questions, please type them in and we'll feed them into the program. Also, if you have comments, we'd love to have those as well. But let's start at the basics, really get going and really establish sort of the parameters for what we're talking about. So from your perspective, let's start with Eli. What does ROE mean to you in your segment of the MICE industry? And I'm assuming this is sort of in the medical field, and then I'll ask the same thing of Jeff.
Well, I'll focus it from the medical and international perspective. For me, ROE, there's many terms where there's return on event, return on experience, return on equity, which is also like ROI, return on investment.
Right.
Return on investment for me, especially the international meetings level, is really, as I mentioned before, it's about cross-cultural exchange and getting to learn about other destinations, learn about the way things work. For the conferences we work with, we have attendees that come from over 70 countries around the world. So we have very different cultures, very different backgrounds, experiences. So we try to, for example, in the service, aside from the housing, we can also support with ground services, very similar to what Jeff does, providing tours and dinners and everything like that. So we try to promote the destination as much as possible, local cuisine, because for somebody coming from Germany, from China, from Australia, from anywhere Latin America, it's a very different experience culturally to see the city. And even within the U.S., between Chicago, San Diego, D.C., Miami, wherever it may be,
sure,
give people a little more of that influence of the local destination. So for me, return on experience is really somebody being able to get back home and say how great the experience was and want them to come back to the destination.
Absolutely. Do you find in communications everything is done in English?
Depends on the location. I mean, for us, everything we do is in English. We also do our marketing in Chinese, Japanese, Portuguese, just most of the E's languages. So we try to cover as much as we can. But we do promote, you know, obviously people are coming into the U.S. It is about education in terms of how things are done here.
Right.
That's what my company does. We try to bridge that gap between what the expectations are abroad versus how things are done here in the U.S.
And Jeff? Your twist on ROE.
And kind of dovetailing on what Eli said, you know, we probably focus more on the return on experience aspect of it. Using equity and investment a lot of times are probably at our client's root level. Why do you travel? You know, what is the purpose of it? What's the motivation and what's the end results? And so for us to create the deliverables that help make those things possible and produce that ROI for our clients, the experience is really what we focus on, trying to keep it custom. Much like Eli said, you know, the experiences, it can be culinary, it can be speaking engagements. Nowadays, what we see probably more so than anything is trying to make every experience feel custom, which can be hard to do in our industry when we create a lot of processes that want to have things in our box. So probably one of the biggest things we think from an experience standpoint is the experience that you all gain throughout the industry is really one of the best guides and training manuals, your graduate degree, I like to call it, in the business, because there's really nothing that can prepare you for every situation that could potentially be posed to a meeting planner. So, you know, all of those experiences kind of build on one another and ultimately help you, you know, pick the right providers, that connection, if you will, that can listen, understand, interpret, and then use that applied learning to hopefully create those really custom experiences and use that to build on, to take back, and hopefully have people always say, hey, that was a great meeting, and keep them coming back for more. You know, we'd like to think that, you know, while today's web call is wonderful and what an incredible way to communicate today, it doesn't replace the endorphins that one feels when you get together in person, and so there's a need for both in our industry, and those in-person experiences are one of the things that we hope keep people wanting to come back for more, whatever destination they pick.
Thank you, Jeff. Well, I'd like to, speaking of thanks, I want to give an extra special thanks to the Cotai Macau Strip area. The Cotai Strip is our sponsor today. And speaking of really neat return on experiences, I'd like to segue to Shirley too, so that she can talk a little bit about the amazing opportunities within Macau. I mean, just one for example, you know, the Venetian in Las Vegas, which is great. It has one nice canal. Guess what? The Venetian in Cotai has 4. Shirley? Tell us a little bit about some of the ROI opportunities, return on experience, ROE, excuse me, return on experience for Macau.
Well, you know, Macau is quite special because we're tiny. We're 11.8 square miles. Yet we like to say we built everything big like they do in Texas. So, you know,
a lot of similarities.
Yeah, so just on the Cotai Strip, we have about 2 hotels that could house over 3,000 attendees, and both properties areas will have over 1 million square feet of convention and meeting spaces. So how's big for you there? But other than that, for experiences, for our destination, we have a unique Portuguese and Chinese culture living side by side for over 500 years. We have World Heritage sites in Macau that were built in the 16th century. So, it's a very cultural city. We have our own food called the Macanese food, which is a blend of Chinese, Portuguese, African, and Indian food.
African.
So yes.
I'm so hungry right now.
The food, and I will tell you, having been there, the food in Macau is incredible.
Yeah, I think if you go, as a FYI, take a bigger size of clothing with you, because when you come back, you need it.
Jeff, I think Shirley's inviting us.
Yeah, and if you like dim sum, they've got great dim sum too.
Oh my God! No,
And the little Portuguese custard cakes or tarts.
Yes.
That's probably one of my favorite types of food.
What about golf, Shirley? People think of Macau and they think small, but what about golf?
Yes, there are 2 golf courses there. There is one near the Cotai Strip that's owned by the Caesars Golf. They have a Butch Harmon school of golf there, and Butch Harmon actually come over twice a year to hold these classes. And then there's another golf course at the Kalawan Island, which is on the rooftop of the Westin Resort. And I believe their driving range goes straight into the ocean.
How fun. I haven't seen that one, but I'll look forward to taking a look in the future. Can you just explain a little bit about the differences between the Cotai Strip area and the rest of Macau? Because there are neat places to stay and use in both areas.
Yes. So the Macau consists of a peninsula with 2 islands. And in between those 2 islands, they reclaimed that portion of the land. So they built that strip in between the islands. So where the Macau Peninsula is where the older housing is, as well as the World Heritage sites. On the 2 islands, we have on Taipa, the first island, that's the international airport, and the Kalawan, it's more of the resort area. And that Cotai Strip is where all the mega resorts are going in. So the Venetian, the Sheraton, just the Grand Hyatt, it's all in that area.
And the City of Dreams and some of those.
Yes,
the architecture is neat.
Galaxy. Yes. It's mega resorts with different architecture. They try to be different from each other. But it's also all themed.
Let's take a break for a moment and find out a little bit about the experience of those who are with us. How long, this is our first poll, how long have you been in the MICE industry? 0 to 5 years, 5 to 10 years, or 10 plus years? Looks like we have quite a few seasoned veterans coming in. I'm curious how many of those have been to Macau or Hong Kong, for that matter, either one. You could hop over. That's the nice thing about Macau. There are a lot of flights, and maybe you can address that, Shirley.
Yes, there's flights within the Asia. Well, let me back up a little. Where we are located, within 5 hours of flight, we have about 3 billion people. So it's half the world's population. So there's a lot of flights regionally. From the United States, you could either fly into Macau or to Hong Kong. From Hong Kong, you can take an hour ferry to Macau. And it goes 24/7, and it's every 15 minutes at the regular sailing hours.
I'm the witness. I've seen the ferries. I've seen the buses. It is nonstop. It's a great place, a lot of fun. But we have a question. Melissa asks, does Macau, and I'm going to read the question as it's written, does Macau have a similar reputation as Vegas? In other words, what happens in Macau stays in Macau.
If you're Eli, yes.
Eli's got a reputation.
No, Macau is very fun, but I think there is a misconception that it's sort of like Vegas, it's all gambling. But there's a lot of things you can do without gambling. I think the last time Virginia came with me, I don't think we visited a casino in four nights that we were there. So there's lots to do. But yes, you can definitely party if you want to.
Well, we passed through as we were in Venetian and Sands and so on. But, I mean, there's a lot to do in a small space. It's sort of like Singapore in a way, you know, a small area with a lot packed into it, both using all available space on the ground as well as up. And if people have been to Macau in the last, before I'd say what, 5-6 years ago, it's not the same Macau at all as in the past. Let's take a little bit of a shift and find out operationally when you start working in the ROE to your program planning. How far out and how does that work with your client or clients? Jeff, let's start with you. You want to create a wow, as you were talking earlier, in every segment of your program. How do you start that process?
You know, it's never too early to start that process. I think, you know, the history that comes from previous programs can be a good place to start. Things that have, you know, a lot of customers these days, and with technology, what it is, have the ability to survey their guests and ask them what they're thinking. Recently, something that comes to mind, we had a pharma group that was in here in Miami, and the feedback that they had, this was an incentive, some of the feedback they had is that, you know, they spend quite a bit of their time when they're working in their everyday life traveling. And so when they do achieve the levels to win these trips, right, they really like to spend the time with the guests that they brought with them, husband, wife, boyfriend, girlfriend. Right. And so when we got into the programs of building, you know, 4 nights of activities every day, it was something that they wanted to try and get away from, but still create an experience. So we started looking at some non-traditional things like evening activities. You know, Eli knows in our neck of the woods, there's a great little area, Little Havana, that a lot of people even locally don't know a lot about. Being able to experience a night out, do a little Latin dancing, things of that nature, where they typically might not have done that before, and it still gives them the one-on-one time that they work so hard to achieve, and they could do the beach and enjoy some of the other things, at least in our neck of the woods here in South Florida, that they come and expect to see the beach. So I think you have to listen to each experience that the customer brings and try to the best of your ability to customize that. And the earlier in the process, the better, so that you can try and hit the mark.
Eli, can you talk a little bit about the budgeting process for these and the budgeting versus creativity in terms of leveraging your dollars and the availability for making an impact?
I think this actually goes back to the definition of ROE. If we're using ROE as return on equity, you know, also known as ROI, yeah. ROE, return on experience, is actually one of the components of doing an ROI study. For example, the tangible versus intangibles. You know, one of the first levels is just surveying your guests and seeing what experience they had. So you want to build in from the very beginning what it is you want when you're determining your goals and objectives for the program, which also helps you determine your budgeting for the program. It's an important thing to make sure that you're taking into consideration the destination you're going to be doing. Now, if you've already selected the destination, you know where people are going to go. You want to work in what the experience is going to be. Obviously, budgets, I've worked with programs that budgets are, you know, not going to say unlimited, but they're very nicely padded budgets versus other programs that are very cheap, for lack of a better word. But you really want to try and tie in whatever you can. As Jeff mentioned, you know, you have a place like Little Havana here in Miami. That's not normally a place people go. It's not South Beach. It's not, you know, the Brickell area. It's not Design District. It's an area that's very local to Miami with local cultures and a lot of Cuban culture. So you want to try and work your budgets based on what you want the end result to be. Obviously, you're going to have some limitations based on how much money you can really spend, but that's where the real creativity comes in.
Exactly.
You want to even want to work on a destination and provide options as destinations based on what the budget may be. For example, that's why in my previous work, I used to do online meetings in Latin America. And Latin America is one of those destinations that people had very wrong assumptions about. The perceptions were actually completely skewed because of, media coverage, and nothing against the media, Virginia, but, there's a lot of media coverage for decades that was very negative. So, but the fact of the matter is a lot of those destinations are actually extremely cost effective. And they also give you a rich cultural experience. And it's important to remember, I think one of the key things when you're planning a program, a lot of the attendees, especially with these incentives where people win the opportunity, there's a chance for you to take them places they've never gone before.
Right.
So this is a great chance to introduce them to something new and introduce them new opportunities and go places that they may never even go to again. So you really want to tie in as much and have them come back and say that big wow factor. Say, I had an amazing time. I can't wait to go back.
Well,
so when it comes to the budgeting, it really needs to be looking at the opportunities, what you want to get out of it, what the end result is going to be, what your goals, objectives are. You budget for that and you find the destination that's really going to work. It can even be a place like Macau. It could be a wonderful option. If it fits into the budget, fits into the goals. For some people, it's an African safari. For other people, it's going to be going to Denver. Mm-hmm. I'm going to Denver in a month, so it kind of just came to me. But everyone has their own experience, and you can always find something great no matter where you go.
Absolutely. We were talking earlier about South America and the turnaround, for instance, in Colombia. There's some great places in Colombia and Brazil and Argentina, Ecuador, Chile, I mean, all throughout the whole region. In addition to Macau, that people don't immediately think of, but once they get there or that it's pitched, it becomes a total wow.
Yeah, and I've personally always been biased towards Colombia, I guess, but I'll tell you, growing up, visiting family there wasn't the greatest experience because it was really during a very rough period. But now, anytime I've gone or I've recommended people go and tell them, they always come back saying, I had no idea and I can't wait to go back, which is always that best result you can get.
Absolutely.
I had no idea this existed. I can't wait to go back.
Yeah, Cartagena could be in Europe and parts of Macau, the old city. I mean, it looks like you're in Portugal. I mean, it's amazing, absolutely amazing.
Yes, it is very European.
Well, even the food. I mean, there are places where you can feel you're in China. There are other places where you feel you're in Europe. It's just phenomenal. Speaking of the destination, how do you use social media to engage your client base and also their attendees in bringing that destination alive, if you will, creating that initial wow and also that long tail? Any thoughts or input along that lines? Use of social media. Shirley, do you have any ideas? And then I'll come to you, Jeff.
We are just in the threshold of using social media for the tourism office. All of our properties have their individual social media platforms. Yes. So I think for the tourism office, we use social media platform as a whole to bring travelers into Macau and not just for the MICE market.
So it's a more comprehensive use of it as an umbrella.
Exactly. Because we feel that when people understand about a destination, then they can recommend it to their client. They will even start planning on coming to Macau for a meeting or incentive. So without that knowledge, it's not the best.
And Jeff, you had some thoughts on social media and the integration of ROE.
Yeah, typically a lot of the app or social media aspects might be a level above the destination management company, but some of the ways we've seen some of our corporate clients incorporate it and trying to keep that lasting impression has been around corporate social responsibility events, give back events. And these are great ways that, if somebody's here in South Florida, in Miami, and their company, a big part of their initiatives are to leave the environment better than when they arrived, social media can be an incredible way to continue to share that experience into the future, so that the day that they built a playground or help restore a home like a Habitat for Humanity, it isn't the day they leave their program isn't the last day they remember it. Social media is a great way to revisit the place 6 months from now, a year from now, and use that to keep it fresh, and also continue that experience, return on experience, to continue that ROI. So I think that's the way we've seen some organizations use it, and be able to make it flourish, at least from the destination management perspective.
Mm-hmm. Eli, do you have any thoughts on social media? Using the
Social media is great. I think it's great. Let's say from the incentive standpoint, the use of social media in the planning of your program. You can even use it as it's a great way to do teasers. For example, if you're with a company that's organizing, I've heard about companies doing like these little launch campaigns, or these teaser campaigns to try and motivate people. So if you're going to be planning that the incentive goal is going to be in Macau, but you don't want to tell people that it's going to be in Macau, you can do little teasers through social media, through little campaigns to show pictures of the destination. Guess where, coming soon. So you can really start motivating people by use of this, be it through Twitter, get people engaged, involved, have them get more active. If a company has a Facebook page, even try and draw in through that. And then as the destination is presented, then you provide more and more insights and details about the location, so it entices people more. Even using Macau's social media campaigns and getting people connected in the various platforms, it can really help to motivate from the incentive side. The same way even through conventions. So I know a lot of conventions are actually promoting the destination itself and the attractions. So I know Orlando, for example, a lot of the associations we work with that are going to be going to Orlando, they're going to be tying in Disney. They try to make it functional for families. One of our largest clients, American Diabetes Association, they actually shifted. They're always in June, but a couple of years ago, they shifted their dates to coincide better with the end of the school year. So that way more families can actually come to the conference. So while the parents or the doctor in the family or whoever's going to be attending the conference is off learning these wonderful educational things, the family's off having fun in Disney. So I think social media does really help for great promotion of programs.
Let's shift a little bit to look at emerging markets, which in the past, Eli and I were talking, sometimes had been referred to as third world, but really all of that is changing now. And for instance, Poland is becoming a hot market. Croatia, a lot of Eastern Europe, parts of Southeast Asia. Hong Kong is reemerging, and you've got Cambodia, you've got what used to be Burma, now Myanmar, on and on and on. Parts of Africa, I mean, really exciting things happening. Would anybody like to jump in and look at the issue and talk about the opportunities for ROE and return on experience in some of these emerging markets? Jeff, and then Eli.
Yeah, as we see customers coming through South Florida, frequently we get to hear about their legendary stories of maybe where they came from or where they're going. And just in the past couple of years, we've heard about some wonderful incentives to Vietnam that maybe 10 years ago you wouldn't have seen. And, I think it just plays into what a small world we are today. And, yes. The people that are looking to stretch those boundaries culturally, and you can use that experience anywhere you go. It doesn't have to just be in an amazing destination. It can be at each destination, but finding the right experience to kind of push those buttons. But certainly as a travel fan, it's exciting to see the corporate travel market, the travel market in general, being so accepting and so adventuresome, just from a personal standpoint.
Eli, and then I'll ask you the same thing, Shirley.
And from, I guess, going back to an ROE standpoint, return on equity standpoint, kind of what I mentioned before, A lot of these emerging markets, which, as Virginia mentioned, unfortunately people use the term third world many times. Third world is not the proper way to describe a lot of these locations. They're actually many of them are first world countries. You can actually, since they are still emerging, they're trying to find their niche and find their way. There's a lot of affordable options, and there's a lot of growth and opportunities. Even in terms of hotels, for example, if you look at like Hotel Online or all these different websites out there that talk about the new hotels that are coming in the pipeline, you see there's a lot that's emerging in China. There's a lot emerging in Latin America, Southeast Asia. There's a lot of new buildings, new programs, or new construction that's coming online in the next few years, or many that have already come online. For example, even Macau. You know, you see a destination that years ago may not have been on anyone's radar. Maybe, you know, people looking for something a little more adventurous or different or more quaint, but now it's really starting to explode. That's happening with a lot of destinations. And at the same time, you know, I'm not sure personally, I haven't had the opportunity to go to Macau yet or experience any business there, but in terms of cost, you know, as you see the emerging destinations build up more and more, if you get in at the right time, you're going to find that even for these corporations that are very budget conscious, you're finding them opportunities that are, number one, amazing experiences, but at the same time, they're going to be cost effective. Even if you balance out the cost of a flight to that destination, your hotel is going to be much cheaper, your food and beverage, your destination, gifts, incentive, tourist activities, they're going to be, as compared to other more emerged and more established destinations, they're going to be much more affordable.
Right. Very good points. Shirley.
For speaking as a destination, I think it's, for the emerging markets, for the U.S. Attendees, it's great because, you know, traditionally, a lot of people will go to Europe for their incentive and meetings, even for their vacations. And because of these emerging markets, the attendees are exposed to new areas that they might want to, you know, come back and tell their coworkers and their families to say, hey, you know, right, forget about Europe, go to Asia, or go to Africa, you know.
Exactly.
It's not that foreign. So it's great in that perspective. And also, you know, when you visit an emerging market, it's quite different in that you're not going to find McDonald's in every corner at this point. You're not going to find Starbucks. So the experience, it's very local and it's very authentic versus, you know, 30 years down the road, you know, the established markets will have all these chain stores and such.
Well, and that's half the fun of it, is being in an environment where you're really experiencing a lot of new to you things, even though they may be historically something that's been there for centuries in that environment. It's new to you, and that becomes exciting. Eli.
I'll mention one thing where you're talking about McDonald's and these. I travel for food. I love to experience local cuisines. You mentioned dim sum before. I almost went crazy. I think it's actually really interesting. If you go to many of these destinations where McDonald's has seriously invaded every country on earth, even the McDonald's, though, is catered to the local palate.
Yes,
so
exactly.
You're not going to find the Big Mac, you know, on the menu in Argentina. It's going to be a different type of sandwich. Or you go to China, you go somewhere else. It's going to be a very different experience.
Absolutely.
I don't advocate going to fast food restaurants, but I will tell you, for example, in Colombia, there's a hamburger chain, which I think is one of the greatest burgers in the world, you know, and it's local to Colombia, you know, so just experiencing the food locally, I think, is one of the greatest ways to learn about a culture.
And I've eaten that. The chain I think you're referring to, and the food is excellent. There's a website that talks about chains, but the localization of the food at the various outlets around the world, and it's really a neat site. And one of the things to experience is good street food. You don't want the street food where you might end up in the hospital, but you learn a lot from an environment, from just walking the streets and finding out what's available to the local population. Jeff?
You know, Shirley, it's funny what Shirley had mentioned. We've had a few conversations in the office recently about, many of you are familiar with the Food Network and the Dives, Diners, and Drive-Ins program. And, you know, kind of to Shirley's point is we here in the United States are an advanced market. We have a lot of the chains that would be from, you know, Houston to Miami to California. So creating some of those unique experiences, and, you know, traditionally in some of the corporate meetings, we have a dine around night where they break up into regions and head out. And we've actually had a few people trying to kind of break the mold, and we've talked about a dives, diners, and drive-in, kind of a little bit more authentic experience going into for those more adventuresome domestic travelers. But just ways to have fun with your destination. I think, you know, certainly you can still have great experiences that don't always have to be echoed by the dollar figure. And so providing that great value on the experience is a big part of it too.
Absolutely, absolutely. One of the fun things about taking a meeting or an incentive to an international or even a domestic market for that matter is to take that population of that group outside of their norm experience. I mean, that's the key. But I want to ask you, is there a difference in where you take people depending on their demographics? Because we know marketing-wise there's a lot of difference in Gen X, Gen Y, baby boomers, et cetera, et cetera. Just curious on your thoughts on that.
I would say absolutely. I think the most important thing is knowing your audience. Even polling them, getting to know if you're working with a meeting planner. If you're a third-party planner, you're working with a company, you need to hope and pray that your contact at that company knows the audience well enough. But it's also a matter of preparing the audience. Preparing the group and explaining to them that you're going to a new culture, a new experience.
Yeah, absolutely.
And again, it's not just going internationally, even going from Miami to, you know, to Philadelphia. You know, you can experience different things, expect different things. It really is trying to find out what people are into, but asking them to please keep an open mind. Obviously, if it comes to dietary restrictions, you want to make sure that there are opportunities or possibilities. Every time I plan a meeting abroad, I always made sure to time the local cuisine as much as possible. However, when I was doing my menu planning, I wanted to make sure that there's something neutral. For example, a seafood dish, you know, very plain, simple, or a meat dish, or whatever it may be, even vegetarian dishes, that it's not going to include heavy curries or spices or, you know, flavors that may be very foreign to people. I mean, I'm an adventurous eater. I will try just about anything. As long as it's not bugs, I guess. It's just not my thing. I love Andrew Zimmern. I love Bizarre Foods. But
it's exactly what came to my mind, Eli.
Exactly. So I want to make sure people gain the experience of the local cuisine and get to understand what it's like, but at the same time be respectful that some people are just not going to be adventuresome. So you want to be able to make sure you cater to them as well.
Yeah.
Jeff, you were going to say? Oh, Shirley, go ahead.
No, I was saying that even as, you know, planners will ask me which hotels should, you know, their clients stay. So you really do need to know your audience, because you don't want to put someone who's, you know, 20s in a super luxurious hotel where it's out of the way for a lot of the nighttime, you know, activities and such.
Oh, they'll make their way there. You know they will.
Oh, I know. But it's just, you know, it's just more convenient if you pick the right venues or pick the right, like you said, menus and things like that from the start. Then you wouldn't have that much trouble in the coming days.
Well, in Macau, you have a lot of range to choose from.
Yeah.
Jeff?
Sounds like it. I've got to put it on my must-see list now.
It's worth it.
Anytime with me.
You know,
I think Shirley's offering.
Hey, you know, you don't have to ask me twice. I'll be in LA tomorrow. We, you know, it's, you know, I think, Virginia, probably a couple of things. Knowing your audience is probably one of the biggest things in order to hit that home run. Being able to connect with them, just like Eli said, you know, the picking the right entrees, and Shirley with the age demographic. Sometimes there are challenges where the group is cross generations, and how do you do it? And sometimes it's by mixing things up, not just with culinary, but by changing their latitude. You know, the Twittersphere world that we live in, you know, you have to keep them entertained. So sometimes changing a cocktail, you know, to where you're having your main entree, transforming a dessert, you know, the cocktail area back into a dessert station, things like that can keep everyone engaged for that dinner and appeal to a wide variety of audiences.
I think it's interesting. We had a silent poll a minute ago, and we asked people, do you or your company have an ROE strategy? And it was almost split. Well, no, now it's 60% yes, 40% no, which is very interesting. And I think it's the 60% is going to be 80 or 90% in the very short future, because it's such an important part of the mice industry, is to really create that great ROE experience from the start to the finish. But given that and the growth of that area, where does the issue of sustainability come in? Do you have a demand from your clients for going to, let's say, an exotic location that is more focused on sustainability or not? And while we're at it, we're going to have a poll. How are you planning for your ROE integration? Alone, with the client, or with the destination or venue? Let's see what the response is to that. And while we're waiting, with the destination, they're coming in quickly. Go ahead and talk a little bit about the sustainability aspect as I'm looking at the data coming in from the poll. Oh, it looks like we're finished here. With the client and with the destination are about split, and then a little bit of the other, which is very interesting and shows the importance of the discussions one has with the venue or destination. But given the issue along that lines of adding the component of sustainability, how has that worked into your program planning, if at all? Anybody?
From our perspective, most of the hotels, a lot of the major chain hotels have their own sustainable initiatives that they're doing. Alongside with that, I mentioned before, Macau has 2 islands. Now the second island is the resort area, and we don't build anything on there. That's all trees and one resort only. So we're trying to preserve Macau to be, there are some places just natural. It's to be protected.
Great.
For the local people. Yeah.
Thank
you, Eli. You were going to say something?
I'd also say it goes into the educational experience. For example, I've done programs in Panama where the Mampre Indians are still very active, within their community. And if you get a chance to go into the Gamboa rainforest and into that area, right. I mean, there are opportunities to do interactive programs with them, so you can see and learn more about the culture without offending in any way. And I think it's a great opportunity for people to learn, and it ties in very much to CSR. You want your people, you have opportunities like Habitat for Humanity or Helping Hands like MPI just did in Vegas. But even at a more local level in different destinations, you can find something that's important to the local culture, and try to, if it's not an actual hands-on activity, educate people more about it, provide them materials, even do a tour if it's available. Trying to maintain that from that sustainability standpoint. From other standpoints, it is working with the destination, seeing what opportunities they have and what can be done. But very much also working with your client to make sure it works, it ties in with what they need.
Jeff, you had some comments?
I think Eli and Shirley pretty much covered, but I think the partnership between the destination and the client is first where it begins, and then it's beginning that custom approach. The understanding of what the goals will be, partnering with something that's not only sustainable but lasting in memory, and that kind of feeds into the experience. So whether it's connecting with the Miccosukee Indians down here and getting a chance to understand their previous way of life, understand a little bit about the Everglades, just again using our little niche of the world, and then leaving something that makes it better, either for the community or for the environment. What is more important, I think, is so customer specific into their corporate message that there's not a one glove fits all. It's more of partnering with the right hotels. Here in Florida, we have the Palm program that, in terms of what they do from recycling and other sustainable options. I think we're going to see, to your point, Virginia, it becoming more and more important. And anytime you can incorporate that and then use your social media, it just helps promote the whole meetings industry, that, we're just doing better as a group, and you're using each destination to help you achieve that, something maybe you couldn't do just from home office.
Absolutely. Talking about working with Native peoples, we did a program, oh gosh, it's been probably about a little over 25 years ago, with several of the different Indian Native tribes in the Amazon. And I mean, that experience still stays with everyone in the group.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they talk about it still 25 plus years later.
And
Wow.
what I can tell you, and what you're probably going to see a lot more and more, and I know it's happening now, a lot of organizations are going to be selecting destinations based on their sustainability efforts, to make sure they tie in with their own CSR component. I know that was a big thing for MPI recently with Las Vegas. They went back to Mandalay Bay because Mandalay Bay recently also implemented a very thorough sustainability program, green initiatives and everything, recycling, which really ties into the CSR vision of the association. So you'll see a lot more companies and organizations, they're going to be looking towards that to make sure that what they're doing is good for the environment and ties in with their beliefs.
Well, and one of the important aspects of that is the projected growth of the industry is astronomical. And you just have to have that at a certain point. Otherwise, you wear a property to the ground. That was one of the concerns, in fact, in Egypt with some of the pyramids and some of the tombs in Luxor, that there was so much population going through there that the stones were being worn down and the pictographs disappearing. And so they've taken measures to make it more sustainable for the property itself, but also positive for the clients who visit. Any last thoughts in terms of tips that you'd like? We have a few minutes left, and I'll ask each one of you to give your insights and thoughts on really making that wow happen in creating the best of all possibilities for your client base in the ROE arena. And I'm going to start with Shirley. Macau is a wow destination in every sense of the word, and like to give you that opportunity, Shirley, to give us your final insights.
Well, a lot of the companies who are holding meetings and conventions are constantly trying to grow their membership. So with our destination, like I said, we're within 5 hours of flight for 3 billion people. So, to increase your membership, that's where you should be holding your meetings and incentives. But also, it's such a cultural city that it wouldn't, your attendees will have such a well-rounded experience with the Asian as well as the European culture right there in Macau, within Asia. So it's a wonderful destination.
And it's also a destination, as you pointed out a little bit earlier, that is so close to other neat places to visit that you could hop. You could do a two-city opportunity as well.
Definitely. It's an hour from Hong Kong. You can walk across the border to southern China. It's also within 2 hours of flight to Shanghai and 3 hours to Beijing. So if you have a program and they don't want to do one destination, it's very easy to do 2 or 3.
Thank you, Shirley. Jeff?
Yeah, I think in terms of just tips, with trying to keep things exciting, we're all challenged. Probably the biggest buzzword we hit around our office is creativity, and not just in its format of production and entertainment or decor and things of that nature, but creative processes, ways to communicate with your guests, way to get excited, applications. I think there are so many great ideas, and as we were talking before the meeting got started, technology changes so quickly. Ways to adapt that and reinvigorate your destination, whether it be something as new as exciting as Macau or something that's more, people are more familiar with, something like a Miami. I think that's probably the biggest thing that we see is trying to spend, we all never have enough time in the day, but spending a little bit of time each day to be creative on the way that you're approaching your business, I think is a great mantra to help us all continue to be successful and move the meetings industry forward.
Thank you, Jeff. Eli?
I'd say to wrap up, the ROE, the return on experience, and the destination being selected, it's one of the key reasons people decide to take part in programs, be it incentives. Aside from a free trip, if you're going to give me a free trip to a boring place, I'm really not going to be too happy. I'm not going to be too motivated. But even for convention goers, for meetings, for attendees of different programs, the destination makes a huge, huge difference in terms of attendance, and it's a matter of how you present it. I think that a place people have never heard of or never thought to go to, if presented properly, can be just as enticing as the more famous locations. Great example being something like Macau. Having people go to Macau versus Las Vegas. Right. Vegas being probably one of the top destinations in the United States. Macau would probably be a fantastic alternative. So it's really how you present it, how you prepare yourself, and show people that the opportunities are there to learn something new, and as I said at the beginning, have that cultural exchange.
And how to package that whole experience from first presentation to fulfillment, getting everybody there, and then the follow-up afterwards. I think it's that whole package that makes the opportunities come alive for the client and their participants. We've got some exciting news. We've had a random drawing, and the winner today of the $100 gift card is Ryan White. Thank you, Ryan. Glad you're with us and glad you won. Matt will be in contact with you.
Wrong.
Right is right. So thanks so much.
I feel cheated.
We're wrapping up, but I wanted to thank you all so much for being on this panel. You did a great job. Eli, Gorin, Jeff, NELKE, and Shirley too. And I want to mention that you can see this program again or share it with others in the industry on the Prevue website, Prevue Magazine website, the iMeet website. They are our co-sponsors, and also on YouTube, and you can hear it on iTunes. So we will have many opportunities to connect in the future. We have another program coming up next month, as we do these once a month, and we're so glad that you have been with us today. And stick with us and stay and watch InFocus Live every month. Bye-bye. Thank you.
Thank you.